That brings us to the Roxbury water quality update. Mr. Dressler.
Chairman, thank you. We met 3 times. We had the DEP on April 30th. We had the Roxbury Township in on May 21st. And last week, on June 11th, we had the Raritan Headwaters Association. What we've done is we've collected information from all these agencies at this point. And I've got to be quite frank, there are concerns. There are a number of concerns that we have about the water in the area, the seepage that has occurred. And we're trying to get as much information as possible. Part of the problem is a number of the documents that were given us by the DEP go back a number of years. So we want to make sure that we have up-to-date information. We'll be having the people from the town in at a meeting, I'd say sometime in July, if we can work it out with everyone. And we will be taking information from the townspeople at that time as to measurements that they have. Right now, we have, I'm sure that you've all seen the reports, there is a concern over benzene that has shown up in the wells. There are 5 wells that have been tested by DEP. We want, to say the least, gentlemen, I'm sure I'm not speaking out of turn, we want more testing done. There are a number of things that we're concerned about. The Raritan Headwaters were in, and Roxbury was in, and we got great information from them. Very up-to-date information. Raritan Headwaters was terrific last week when they came in. They gave us a lot of good information about what's going on in the various areas of the streams. So we've taken that information. We're working with that information, and after we meet with the townspeople, we expect to have a meeting with ourselves, Roxbury Township, the DEP, and Raritan Headwaters can come up with a way of taking care of this situation once and for all. It's not an overnight solution. It's going to take a while to make sure that this is taken care of in a professional, efficient manner, to make sure that the health of the people in the town is taken care of. It's not going to be done overnight. So, I don't want you to have those expectations that we're going to go in and come up with, a plan, and that plan is going to be put into effect, and everything's going to be taken care of in a couple of months. That's not going to happen. It's taking years to establish this problem, and it's going to take a while to make sure that the situation is rectified. But we have been with the 3 agencies. We'll have you in sometime, hopefully in July, then a meeting of all the concerned agencies, and we'll come up with a plan.
No question. Judge, the data you've been collecting, the water quality data, will they be tabulated and made available to the public from your committee?
Everything will be made available to the public, yes. Complete transparency.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the report. Thank you.
Oh, by the way, one thing. The staff, I've got to say, the staff, Margaret, the staff has been terrific. They've worked overtime on this. They've given us a lot of good information, a lot of good, substantial ideas as to where we should be going. Michael Francis and Carl have been terrific. And, this committee's worked and has worked hard because we do realize there's a potential problem, and we want to rectify that. It's not just lip service.
Productive staff, they couldn't do it. Thank you for your comments. That brings us to our last order of business, public session. A reminder to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Anybody that's wishing to comment on the Fenimore issue, I would ask that you wait till we get the other comments out first, so Mr. Allsted can take over and deal with that particular
portion of the meeting, and we'll open it to comments on Roxbury Township. Anybody like to speak? Yes.
Ken Collins from Andover again. This is getting kind of repetitive in this room for me. Once again, I'm before you to ask that you rescind the redevelopment designation that the New Jersey Highlands Council granted for the Fenimore landfill property. As you are well aware, there are clearly documented problems with the stream quality, seepage, and benzene in the wells nearby. While the fate of the remainder of the property remains in question, it makes sense for the Highlands Council to rescind the redevelopment designation and leave it to the future landowner, whoever that may be, to request it going forward. Thank you for forming a Roxbury Water Quality Committee. Now please take the next logical step and rescind the redevelopment designation that you granted for this property. Thank you.
Here, here.
Additional comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Kathy Panetta, 14 Raritan Avenue, Ledgewood. I want to thank you so much for allowing Raritan Headwaters and giving them an entire, portion of one of your meetings to listen to their invertebrate studies. When you initially talked about having data, you said chemical monitoring, and I'm like, oh no! I mean, I was one of the people last year scooping we couldn't leave until we found 100 critters in the bucket. And we were there, usually it takes a half hour. We were there 2 hours, and I could, I've told you, I could fit 10 of them in my fingernail, and they were all dead. So I was thrilled that you spoke to him, and you had a DEP person also here that spoke to that. I just have a couple comments based on the minutes of the meeting, and I know they're very general, so I might be off base with some of this. I see the reps from the town were Rick Blood, who's the Department of Public Works. I'm not quite sure why he was sent or how appropriate that was. He repairs our potholes and fixes the parks and stuff. He's a lovely man, but I don't know how that had anything to do with Fenimore. And Mark Caputo, who's our health director, but he's never once been to a council meeting to answer all of our questions. We CC him on multiple emails that go to Ed Putnam, GOH, Christie, everybody else. And when I've had conversations with him on the phone on some of my concerns, he says he knows nothing about it. And I know I've CC'd him on these emails. He shares services with Randolph, so I don't know, honestly, this is so consuming now, if he has the time to really give you an honest opinion. At any rate, that was just a comment. I see that, thank goodness for more water testing. Thank you very much. You're getting $35,000 to the town in a grant to do the testing. My concern, and I'm sure you would have the same for honest information, is they're in a lawsuit, and it looks right now like the site might go back to Bernardi, which is even more of a reason not to make it a brownfield, because God knows what he would do. But for testing purposes, I don't know if you trust the DEP to do accurate testing that's unbiased for the town, since their necks are both on the line in this lawsuit. I would ask that somehow you find an unbiased person to do that testing so that we know that it's accurate and there's no questions at all involved in it. One more thing, the Raritan Headwaters, was doing their last week, June 15th to the 30th, they do all their stream monitoring, and maybe because of you, they're doing chemical monitoring this year. Did you make that happen?
No, they were planning to do that.
Okay, that's
This
brand
information
new.
won't be available to us till the fall.
I was gonna ask, are you gonna consider that, because I know
We
we're
hope to
doing
have
it
this-
this weekend, and
We
I didn't
hope
know
that-
if
we
you were...
hope to have this wrapped up before then. We'll try and get as much information from them as possible, but they told us that information won't be available.
Wonderful, so you will be considering that as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was all I had. I only had 3, and I wanted to add, beside benzene, you probably know, it was dioxane 1 and 4 that was also found in the well, which also came out of combs, and it's very dangerous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak tonight? Mr. Schuler? On Roxbury, please.
Yep. Matter of fact, I'm going to refer to your Roxbury Water Quality Committee thing here, where it says, Chris Stannis, Director of Planning and Science, commented that the council does not collect data. However, we do empower those to collect data and use that data for our stakeholders. That's a powerful word. Empower? Empower to do what? What are the parameters by which you empower anybody to collect data? I'll collect some data for you. Empower me. I'll show you how it's done. So I'd like a clarity on that empowerment. And what we have over here is a bunch of nonprofits who without an issue don't exist. I'm pointing generally.
You're pointing it at me.
Well, how about that one, and how about that one, and how about
Let's
that
have
one?
some more
Over there
data.
too. Did I get them all? You feel
Remember,
better now?
remember you're referring your
No, I
comments to
don't.
Roxbury.
I beg your pardon?
Roxbury.
Yes, and one of the people who is collecting data, empowered to collect data, is the Raritan Headwater Association. They're a nonprofit. They get paid. They all get paid to be here and look for mischief even where there isn't any. So be careful who you empower.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak on Roxbury issues this evening? Yes.
I'm from Roxbury resident, actually I'm a Dover resident as well. I'd like
Just
to.
your name again, please.
Canada.
Thank
I'd
you.
like to follow up what Ken said before about coming back and looking at that resolution that you guys passed to allow Bernardi to move forward, and based on what this gentleman over here had said in your water testing and everything else that's going on, if the Fenimore landfill, if he wins this court case coming up, that everyone in this room is aware of, I hope, he could get that property back, and just like in the Ghostbusters movie, shut the grid down, because he's going to do that, and he's going to continue to develop that property, and like someone else in this room said about the trees and whatever, he's going to develop and develop and develop. And right now, I have two houses. Fortunately, my mother passed away a couple of years ago, and my wife and I are living there, and my kids are still in my house in Roxbury. And the problem is, we're at the bottom. I don't know if my well's polluted or not. We're having it checked again, but my wife can't live there. There are other people can't live there in Roxbury, but they're not as fortunate as I am to go to Dover. But this is a situation that is ruining a lot of people, not only Carl and Kathy Panetta. It's ruining a lot of people. And one time you and I, Mr. Alstead, went at it and you said to me, we can't do anything. Well, you can do something now by going back and taking that resolution and changing it, because if you don't, Bernardi is going to get that property back, and you know what's going to happen then? We're going to have a huge mess, and the water's going to even get more polluted, and why would it not? Because he's going to cut down more trees, and there's a whole load of other things that's going to happen. And the smell is going to come back, because when he shuts down that grid. So this is a very, very important problem, and it's affecting a lot of people's lives. And this gentleman, thank you very much for what your group is doing. We were skeptical at first, but I appreciate what he's doing. And now the town of Roxbury, and you can ask your illustrious chairman, is now starting to think that maybe they made a mistake by allowing the DEP to come in and take it from Bernardi and not truck the crap out. So we need to understand that you're talking about people's lives, just like the farmers, but we're getting stuck with a situation that you guys, Mr. Alstein, you guys, your committee can do something about by doing what I've asked and what Mr. Collins has asked for. This is an important issue. It's an issue of life and death. Now, you guys may think that I'm using those words, but it is. It certainly is. Thank you very much for listening to me. I really appreciate. I saw your notes there that you'll be getting back to us. My question is, we'd like to see that come back to you guys, your team, to re-vote on it so we can stop this. So I'd like to see you guys do that again. That's my question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, additional comments, please.
My name is Marion Emery. I live on Canal Street in Ledgewood. I am also at the bottom of the hill from where Fenimore Landfill is. I am one of the sick who does not have anywhere to go. I live in 2 rooms in my house in front of air purifiers. My voice is like this because this is just my normal everyday voice until I get out of Ledgewood for more than a couple hours. I'm asking you to please consider rescinding, because if Bernardi comes back and does what he did before, I am just going to get worse. I have nowhere else to go. You guys have the power to stop him from doing this again to us. And if he wins these court battles, he's going to do it again. I don't like living in 2 rooms of my house. I don't like not being able to go outside. I don't like having to wear a gas mask riding down Route 10. I don't like having to not open a window in my house. So please do what you can do and rescind before this guy comes and gets us again. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry?
If I might?
Sure.
I think that, we're missing a little bit of this scene here. All that we've, and I say the Highlands Council, I voted no that. All that the Highlands Council has done is granted the ability to come back for solar development. Okay? If Bernardi wins this lawsuit, that's the least of your problems. He won't come back for solar development. He'll open that site up. So, whether the Highlands Council rescinds or not, it's irrelevant at this point. If he wins that lawsuit, that's the least of the problems. What we're trying to do is rectify the situation. We're trying to find out if the site is seeping. If it is seeping, what is it seeping? And how do we rectify the situation?
Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you said, sir? I don't quite understand what you mean.
Well, I think we need to be careful not to have it back and forth during the public
Well,
session.
then, why don't you let him talk to us, because that's really important.
If I
He's a
may,
judge.
he will certainly, I'm sure, stay and speak to you following the meeting, and that, as long as you wish, but we just need to maintain the meeting decorum.
I
So I'd like to
understand.
continue with the public session if I may, and is there anybody else who wants to comment specific to any Roxbury Township issues this evening? Yes, sir, please. Just your name, please.
My name is Bob Peslak. I live in Roxbury, and I was listening to you, Mr. Dressler, and you seem to express concern about the benzene. My problem is that from what I'm getting, from what you were saying, there's not going to be any expediency in any measures to address this problem, which we've been living with for quite some time now. And this brings it to a whole new level, because there's a discrete and insular minority of people who have shallow wells that are down gradient of this landfill. And from the beginning, my whole position was that the legislature let this happen, because our senators voted unanimously for this solar bill, which gave them the power to reopen this landfill in the I don't want to say pretense, but in putting solar fields. And as it turned out, that was never going to happen. And when the township got in a little bit of trouble, they came and shifted the responsibility on the people, asking us to go to Trenton and plead before the people who created this problem. Senator Whalen wrote the bill. The senators voted on it unanimously. This man was a convicted felon. The Berger Group, who provided the initial analysis for Fenimore Landfill, 3 of those gentlemen who represented that firm, the chairman, the CEO, and the vice president, are all federally indicted. Excuse me, but I am incredulous with every system that was put in place to protect the people has failed. And we sit here and there's analysis of everything, and there's no action. We're sitting at the bottom of an unlined landfill with every night people are going to bed wondering if this is going to be in their water. And we cannot have constant monitoring to see if it's in our water, and we're living with this every day. And this is part of what these government agencies were supposed to stop from happening. And I think when they separate themselves from the mass of people, that there is very little moral distinction, and you're serving injustices rather than justices. So that's really all I have to say, and hopefully we'll be able to address this thing in a more expedient fashion.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak to anything? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Bob Schultz from Randolph. First, I'd like to thank Judge Dressler and Councilman Francis and Councilman Richko for all the work that they've done so far on the committee. We appreciate it very much, and we look forward to providing information to you as well as seeing what your report is. The benzene that was found, for all that you don't know, for all of you that don't know, in those wells was between 0.27 parts per billion and 15 parts per billion. The groundwater quality standard is 1 parts per billion. We all know benzene's a really bad chemical, and it's very concerning to us that this has been found, and we wonder, if it's getting into the wells down at the bottom of the mountain. There's over 200 public wells down there of residents, and I'm sure that most haven't done their own water testing. And that's something that should be done, and we've recommended it since the beginning, but still a lot of people don't know, or they might not have money to do it. The 1.4 dioxane is another concern of ours as well. That was found at Coneville North. It was found at Coneville South. North just recently, because they started testing it, and they found it in a resident's well, and here it is 20 years later, and they finally just found it. It migrated off the site and got into this resident's well. And if you read the article that came out, I think it was in the Mount Olive newspaper, the DEP is now going to run a water line up to that resident's house, just one resident, and it's going to cost $1 million. And it's absolutely ludicrous. What's even more concerning to us is in all the testing other than the last round of NJDEP testing, the dioxane has never been tested for. So we don't know if it was there before or if it just came in now. We don't know if it's in any of the well testing that was done at the residents' houses. We don't know really anything other than this last round of testing, and we need more testing. And I absolutely agree with you. I mean, it probably should be done on a quarterly basis at this point. Another fact here is only 15 out of those 60 acres has been disturbed and tapped. That means there's 75% of that landfill left to do something with. And I implore you guys, so one thing you can do is get rid of that solar redevelopment here, because that way it'll just be tapped and that'll be the end of it, or trucked out, is what we still want. And nothing else can happen there like what has happened before.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments? That being the case, we're going to close the public portion of the meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Council members, any final comments?
Yeah, one comment, Kurt, and piggybacking on what you brought up earlier about Clinton Township. I thought we had asked for staff long ago to ensure that TDR was brought up with every applicant that came through here, to go over with them, to encourage them to be part of it, and to tell us if they weren't, why. So what happened with Clinton Township?
Sure.
Anyone?
In the case of Clinton Township, they have The center study is evaluating what's facing them right now is their affordable housing component. The TDR component, when those market rate units come that you transfer, you don't transfer affordable units, you transfer market units. So part of the study is to figure out in the planning how much of it needs to be the affordable units and how much of it will be market that could then be evaluated for potential TDR down the road. But first they have to figure out where they are on that affordable bill, which will drive it.
Understood, but how come that wasn't then part of the several steps and the condition, thank you, the conditions that we set forth? We set forth in the resolution to approve that they have the checklist ordinance, and then later they have the normal ordinance that supersedes and replaces the checklist ordinance.
Right.
So why was there nothing in that requirement that stipulated that we have a TDR study, which would have been subsequent to the town center study?
We don't know just yet what the town center study is going to find. We don't have a scope of work for that. That could be a component that would evaluate how much capacity is available and what are the economics available to see that.
The downside is that if the town center study shows that TDR is not a good option, nothing's lost. But if it shows it's a good option, any municipality, this is not particular to Clinton Township, any municipality can say, well, that's nice, but we're not interested. So if we don't make it a part of the approval, we miss that opportunity. So I would encourage, obviously I can't direct you guys to do this, but I would encourage the council to direct staff that we make that part and parcel of getting approval, is that if you want to have these town center studies, you want to get approval in the planning area, that you at some point look at the TDR and make that considerable a part of your approval process.
Chairman returns.
We'll take that into consideration.
I think I caught most of that.
Just for your information, we're having problems getting developers that want to participate in TDR in the urban portions of our county, because all of the towns are looking for redevelopment, and they don't want the extra cost. So we're really having a problem getting the developers who would be paying the money in for those rights. They don't need the rights.
We've talked about that at length in the committee.
And it's a problem, right?
Yeah, the flaw in the Highlands Act compensation scheme, which is the TDR program, is the lack of our ability to assign receiving areas. Every other successful TDR program allows you to assign receiving areas. These are taking areas, these are receiving areas, giving areas, receiving areas. We have to depend on the goodwill of the 565 municipalities to accept being a receiving area. And the question before our committee is this just a flaw or a fatal flaw? If it's a fatal flaw, then the whole notion that this act has compensation for landowners will truly be exposed as a fraud. I have my opinion about where it will go, but give us some time to ferret that out.
And which is why we took a different direction in trying to go down the open space path, because at least, again,
It's another avenue available to us.
it's just an avenue that we're trying to get. We only have so much funding available to us, and
I think there's a very simple answer that nobody wants to talk about, so I'm not going to talk about it today. But all of the towns that are the towns lose revenue when land gets preserved in open space. They don't get any tax dollars for it. It's always a nonprofit or a county that picks it up, right? There is a solution to it. There's a solution to funding the bank that farmers can use, and we talked to them about it. And it gets to be a political issue, which it shouldn't be, but we should have a public discussion on this because there is a solution to it, and it's with the legislature. I know we get beat up all the time. I've said it before. They put it in a flawed bill in terms of compensation. And I don't want to make this urban versus rural, but the reality is the rural portion of the state, and I'm going to go along with the science, and the fact is it supplies water to half the state. The Highlands supplies water to nearly half the state. That's a responsibility that lays on those towns and those homeowners. There's got to be a compensation put in that those of us who don't live in the Highlands, who drink that water, should be willing to pay up.
And that's the
a
third.
bit.
And
I'm not saying a massive amount, but a bit would be a lot.
And Freeholder, that is the third item that the Landowner Compensation Committee is working on. It is the TDR program, the open space program, and the yet to be said
other things.
Other things.
And Rob,
I'm not gonna call it tax, because that's what this is. It's not, no, it's a water fee. Let me tell you something. The New Jersey State Legislature, because I just love them, passed a bill allowing foreign companies to buy up all of the government-owned water companies. Water is gonna be the next issue in this country. Everybody can say it isn't. Watch California, watch what's happening around the world, where water deficit areas are becoming huge, all right? So, we have the resource, and there is, you can call it a tax, and that's the political end that'll kill it, but if you're talking 5 cents per 1,000 gallons, it's not gonna kill anybody. And it provides the money necessary for these people to get compensated, for the towns to fill in their tax deficit from preserving that land, and we can say what we want. We're spinning our wheels with all this other stuff because it's never going to put enough money in. Go buy the people will buy a bottle of water for $2, but they won't pay a nickel or a dime more for 10,000 gallons or 1,000 gallons. Something's a little crazy, Jim.
You're absolutely right, and without saying too much, years ago, 30 years ago, I was county council in Bourbon County, and I used to have a pretty old director tell me, this is what we want to do, you tell me how to get there. We have an idea of what we want to do. We just need the information that, to tell us how to get there. And that's what the staff is compiling.
You gotta have legislators
Once we've got
that care
that,
about local property taxes.
Once
Everything
we've
they
got-
do in the legislature falls on the property owners, but they don't raise the tax.
we can't just go in with a recommendation half-assed.
No.
We gotta do a recommendation
Real
where
numbers.
we've got the data to back us
Real
up.
numbers.
And that's what we're doing.
That's what we're working on.
And if he'll go along, it'll pass.
Any other comments?
I put all faith in you.
Yes, sir.
The draft act, the draft Highland Act, up until a few days before the act was passed, included a provision that 4% of each Highlands municipality be specified for receiving area. Maybe we could plead with the legislature to have another look at that.
I think if they're gonna open up the act, I think there's a lot of things we should.
That would be a suggestion. Maybe we could.
That'll happen as soon as you get a constitutional convention. Either one's happening.
All this crazy. Any other comments?
Yeah.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second?
I know, I'm having fun now, I want to stay on.
On another subject, replacing for our attorney.
Yeah. Well, you updated your-
I know you have resumes in.
We're interviewing July 2nd.
Can we see those resumes? Can you send them out?
Is there? Yeah. Any other comments? We have a motion to adjourn? All in favor? Aye.
There we go.